Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Welcome back. We are here with the Brown Sports Bag. John and I are going to break down some high school football from Friday night. Yay, it was finally high school football season, John.
Yeah, it was nice. A delay, obviously, about a 3-week delay. But as far as I can tell, I think things went overall well. I know what went on the field did. I know it was a lot of work for a lot of the host schools, I can tell you that, to put all this on. But I would say after the first week it's been a success.
I will tell you one thing that I did like to see on social media on Friday, Thursday, and Friday leading up to it was a lot of, I don't know about parents, but a lot of coaches and players basically saying thank you to the KHSAA and the health departments and the governor's office for working with them to let us have a fall sports season. And I'm with you. I thought things went pretty well. I actually went to Breckenridge County on Friday night. I emailed the AD there ahead of time. He sent me the form that I needed to fill out. When I got there, they checked my temperature. I was not too hot, maybe a little cold, as a matter of fact. And so all that went well, and I know those are the same kinds of things. When I've gone to the soccer matches over the past week since we got started, it was the same kind of procedures, and to me, everything seemed to go pretty well. Looked to me that people coming in the gates were patient. I don't know if that was your observation at Barron on Friday.
It's true. At the soccer game as well, people coming in were patient and understanding and so forth. And I think for the most part, people were, 90 to 95% of the people were compliant in terms of wearing the mask and so forth. I mean, it's hard to get 100% at all times. I mean, it's difficult.
With anything.
with anything. But I think for the most part, people did a good job.
Yeah, so let's get on to the football games. We'll go ahead and start out with the Barron game, and then we'll go to Glasgow, and we'll talk a little bit about Caverna at the tail end of this. Barron, what was interesting to me, both for the Barron-Monroe game and the Glasgow-Allen game, is the scoring was very slight in the first half, and it looked like in both games things got cranked up a little bit in the second half. And specifically in the Barron game, the Trojans scored right before halftime, got a good stop right before halftime to preserve their lead. Then it took a little while for things to get going again in the third quarter. Monroe scored. Gavin Withrow returned the ensuing kickoff for a touchdown, and then Barron got a couple of scores from Jamarcus Bowie to Miley in the fourth quarter to salt it away. Do you think in the first half of that particular game things were just a little bit sluggish, or how did you kind of see the first half of that game?
I thought overall for the first game, with the lack of scrimmaging and so forth, that it was played remarkably well, the Barron-Monroe game. Right. Very few penalties. I know other games that I've heard, you're going to talk about the Glasgow game, there were penalties.
All right.
There were very few penalties, very few turnovers, and I thought the game was played pretty clean, and I thought Barron played really well. Part of their lack of scoring early is they never had the ball. Monroe had the ball the last 8 minutes of the first half, and then received the kickoff to start the second half, and they had it the next 7. So they had it 15 minutes straight just on the clock, not counting the 20 minutes for halftime, and they scored in the second half, and the next play it was a kickoff return for a touchdown by Gavin Withrow, which kind of changed the momentum, I guess you could say. But Barron probably went total elapsed time close to an hour and 20 minutes without taking an offensive snap.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to get into a rhythm without that. But I thought Jamison Bowie, the quarterback, was really, really good. And, I said that on the air Friday. This is the first time that I can really remember. And I've been doing Barron football for 25 years. It's been a long time since we've had a returning starting quarterback come back. Mm-hmm. We've been on a run where the first-year starter was a senior.
Right.
And Jamison started and took every snap last year as a sophomore and really had a good sophomore year. And you could tell that I thought that experience of a quarterback play coming in this year would be really important, especially with the lack of spring football and practice and so forth. Mm-hmm. He was good. Gavin Withrow was really, really good. He ran the ball well. He didn't run it a lot, but he caught it well. He started on defense and made some good plays as a defensive back, and he had the big touchdown return. Jamison, Jamarcus Miley was tremendous. He's a 4-year starter, but boy, he was. He played on both sides too. I'm not for sure if his best position is not as a defensive back. He made a huge interception in the end zone.
Right.
That kind of was another momentum changer. And then he had a couple of touchdown passes as well. The 65-yard bomb from Jamison Bowie, and then the last touchdown of the game to kind of seal it, where it's kind of a little swing route, and he basically just out-sprinted Monroe County defenders who kind of had an angle on him for an 18-yard touchdown. I thought those guys were good. Ryan Shirley was a starting running back, and also the middle linebacker. He scored the first touchdown of the year for the Trojans, and also had a lot of tackles. And Joe Bradshaw, I thought he was really good on defense as well. I thought Barron was very, very good. I was impressed. I thought Monroe, with the players that they lost, they're young too. Their starting quarterback, I think John O'Harlan's a sophomore.
Right.
He made some good plays, but it was a good win for Barron.
Yeah, one of the things I think is probably critical for Barron is that they really only have one offensive lineman returning. Is that Hunter Wilson in terms of like real experience?
That's true. And one of the things they did, they shifted 2 starting defensive tackles to the offensive line. Mm-hmm. Carmelo Francis and Joe Bradshaw has moved to the other side of the ball. They're playing both ways, and I thought their offensive line was actually did a good job.
Yeah. So that's a good win for them. Their next trip is to Hancock County on Friday night. Hour and 50 minutes or whatever to get up there from here.
Every bit of it. Down on the
go to Owensboro and take a right.
Yeah, it's down on the river.
Yeah.
It's a long way. They opened up with a win against Edmonson County.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be a difficult trip and environment, but a team that they're a single A, double A team. It's a team that if Barron plays the way I think we're capable, obviously Barron should have an advantage.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in the Glasgow game, I think a couple of things. Let's go back to the Barron game because I want to make a kind of quarterback comparison situation here. Bowie only threw 12 passes, but he completed 10 of them.
Yep.
I mean, it was a very efficient passing game.
And again, they didn't have a lot of possessions.
Right.
That's part of it. I think they would have probably thrown it more if they had the ball more.
Right. Meanwhile, Glasgow. It would seem to me that for Glasgow, they played Allen County. That's also pretty much a rivalry game, sort of like the Barron Monroe game. Some folks don't say it is, but I think it's a bit of a rivalry game through the years because they've been such good games so many times. Mm-hmm. Same case with Glasgow and Allen. They really own the series advantage. They've beaten Allen quite a bit more than Allen's beaten them, but they played some slobber knocker games through the years. They played some tight games, and Friday nights was no exception. And of all things to really kind of circle on Glasgow's roster and say, is this going to be the most important player or the most important thing? It turned out their kicker, Luke Allen, and their kicking game was the key difference in that game against Allen County.
Happens a lot in close games.
Yeah.
A game sometimes in these close games comes down to a simple extra point or sometimes even a field goal or a good punt or whatever. So that does happen. But that was a game that I thought would be a good game. Allen has returning a lot of players.
Yeah.
And
quarterback and their number one wide receiver, Jax Cooper. I mean, those are the 2 key things, I think.
And returning a lot of players after last year, they had a lot of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And the coach at Allen does a really good job. Well, they bring it every single night.
Yeah.
They play hard. They may not always be the most talented, but they play hard. And it was a game that I thought with the amount of people that Glasgow lost. Now, Glasgow's got good players, don't get me wrong. And,
right.
But they lost a lot of good players. And John Carter Myers is one of the returning, but he's not the returning starting quarterback.
Yeah.
But he played well. I think he threw it for over 200 yards. And of course, he's good on defense. That was where he made his name for last year. And Glasgow made enough plays. It was 0-0 at halftime. And then there was an explosion in the second half. It ended up being 21-19. With Allen failing on their 2-point conversion with about, a minute and a half to go in the game?
Yeah, I think it was 150 to go.
Yeah, that would have tied it. So, the game kind of went down to the end. Unlike the Barron game, I think there were more mistakes and penalties in this game.
Well, and that's what Glasgow offensively and defensively more or less dominated the first half, but they missed a couple of opportunities to score. I think Allen had about 35 yards maybe at halftime. They didn't have many yards at halftime, and Glasgow had quite a bit more, and they finished with almost 200 more yards than Allen on offense. So they kind of missed some opportunities, but I think it goes back to what you just said. I mean, they lost a lot of key skill players from last year, names that we would know. I mean, and they're being replaced by players who saw playing time. One of them being Andrew Phillips there, who saw playing time last year. But, I mean, he had a huge night catching the football for Glasgow, but he just wasn't the main guy on the receiving core last year. So he probably made more of a name, sort of like Myers did, on the defensive side last year. And these guys are getting their opportunity to play in these games. And that Allen County game is a tough one to start out with because, I mean, Allen brings back experience. You know they're going to hit you hard every Friday night. And these guys they're getting warmed up, with only a couple of weeks of real practice. They're getting warmed up in their first game of the season, trying to learn how to execute and deal with the pressure of the game itself, John.
Yeah, and Glasgow is, of course, they have such a tradition in terms of football, but on the offensive side, they've always had explosive running backs and things like that. Some real good skilled players, and this is the year that for the common fan or whatever was a little bit did not know some of these players. To be perfectly honest with you, and Andrew Phillips had a monster game, as you said, as a receiver. I think over 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter Scott was another player who was more. He didn't run it as much last year as he did last night. He was not the man, I guess. And Hunter Scott is another one to look out for. And of course, John Carter Myers that tells me that win against Allen tells me that Glasgow is going to be they're going to be formidable again. Not that I thought they would.
Yeah.
But that's a game that's a good win on their schedule, especially opening up.
Yeah, you mentioned the thing about that win is Glasgow has a good program. They have good players every year. But when you lose a 3-year starter at running back and a 3-year starter at quarterback and a 3-year starter at wide receiver and a couple of offensive linemen who were 3-year starters, and then that also means that some of those guys like Phillips and Scott, who did a lot on defense, and Myers did a lot on defense last year, are being asked to do a lot more all the way around this year. And like you said, I mean, you may recognize their names from the tackle box from previous years, but you're looking at them now, and that is a good win. And it also says to me, what kind of impresses me is the fact that game was under so much pressure because Allen County does have all these players back. It's going to be tough. Now, neither one of these teams had the spring to work, but and they had the same amount of time to get ready for the season, but you would expect Allen to be ahead of where Glasgow would be in preparation just because they were bringing back so many players. Right.
And again, it makes it a good win for Glasgow. I mean, but it's also why Glasgow is a good program too. I mean, you're a good program when you lose players that everybody knows, and you come back with players that people really are not familiar with, and you plug them in and go, hey, they can play.
Right.
That's a good program.
Meanwhile, Caverna was on the road at Breckenridge County, and Caverna is they're in the position. I will tell you this: Breckenridge, which Barron will host later in the season, so you'll get to see them when they come to Barron. They ran the ball effectively. They ran the ball pretty well all the way around. They got some pretty good guys. I was hearing the chatter on the chain gang that I think their quarterback may have missed last season because of injury or most of it, and so he looked pretty good, and they had a couple of pretty good guys. Caverna played well early defensively, made some stops, and they've got some guys who look like quality football players, Caverna does, but I do think they may have been more affected than maybe Barron and Glasgow about the no spring and the limited amount of practice leading up to the season, because they also have some guys that they've managed to convince to come out that play basketball, that do other things, and those guys are first time football players, a lot of them, and so you could kind of tell as the game went along that was kind of the impact. But they did have some guys. Cameron Buchanan, their quarterback, looked good. Colton Riley at running back looked good. Isaiah Stone played pretty well for them. He's a guy who didn't play the last couple of years. So, I mean, they're going to – luckily their district is not real tough. Their schedule is probably a little bit soft. That gives them a chance to maybe get some wins this year. But their numbers still are, they're around 20 players, so their numbers are still a struggle for them.
Yeah, that's the struggle. It's hard to play with 20.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get ready for a year with no scrimmages with 20 because you really can't even scrimmage each other.
Well, that's one of the things that Coach Lasley said at the end of the game.
Even if you wanted to scrimmage, I don't know how much you would do when your roster is so small.
Right.
You can't afford to get anybody hurt either.
Yeah.
So it's a tough situation, and their numbers have never been great, but sometimes. It's a catch-22. They need quality numbers to get wins, but sometimes you need wins to get numbers.
Right.
And they're in that kind of that catch where they haven't got any wins in the last so many years, and it's really affected their numbers. And until that changes, or until there's just maybe a class of kids who wants to play football and turn it around, they're always going to be kind of stuck in this spot that they're in right now.
One of the things Coach Lasley said at the end of the game, though, that he was pleased with was that they didn't quit playing. I mean, they got their touchdown. They lost 47-6, I think, but they got their touchdown late in the game, and they kept playing. And he was proud of their effort, especially considering, as we were just discussing, the combination of numbers, lack of real scrimmages, that kind of thing. And this is for some of these guys. And football's a sport, It's all well and good in practice until you get out there and people start hitting you, and then that kind of changes the equation sometimes about how you feel about the game. And so he was pleased with their effort, and he's looking forward to that. I did not mention, though, that Glasgow opens their district this coming Friday at Hart County. I would say that's a pretty good matchup for them. It'd be a game that they should win. Hart, but Hart sometimes has some pretty outstanding teams that crop up. So we'll see how that goes. Anything else you can think of related to high school football?
No,
John?
I mean, big win by Bowling Green.
Yes.
Knocking off St. X, and almost a dominating 14-0 win. I mean, they kind of dominated both sides of the ball. In fact, it was Coach Wallace, now the coach at St. X, basically said in the paper that I was reading, he just kind of apologized. He said, don't blame the kids, this is on me. He said, I've probably been too careful with the social distancing and COVID, where we're not ready to play. He said it's hard. He said I got 140 kids. It's hard to social distance and things like that. He said, if we're going to start competing and winning games, I've got to go back to coaching it the right way.
Yeah.
So you got that. Warren Central's losing streak continues. They got thumped by Greenwood,
who looked really impressive. Their running game looked really good against Warren Central.
Remember, Greenwood looked really good early last year too.
That is correct. They sure did.
South Warren rode over Warren East. Metcalf got a good win at Adair.
Yep.
Came from behind. I think won 22-19. So congratulations to those guys over there. I like the coaching staff. They've always been a class act. So congratulations to those guys. So. Other than that, I don't know of any upsets or anything like that. But obviously, anytime you knock off St. X, it's a good win.
Well, there was one from Barron County's district that was pretty impressive. That was North Hardin's win at Frederick Douglass.
It was
a pretty impressive win.
That was a good win, no question. But of course, North Hardin was they were state semifinals last year, 6A. So it's a good win.
Bunch of key players back too.
Bunch of key players. That's exactly right. They went on a last-second field goal.
Right.
So good win for them. Central Hardin, I think, in our district lost to E-Town in a close one, and Meade beat John Hardin.
Right. Well, it's going to be an interesting football season. I look forward to the remainder of the games that we have and getting through this year. I was excited to be on the football field. I can tell you that much. It was a lot of fun to be out there shooting photos and taking notes.
Yeah, it some semblance of normalcy.
That's right.
Not total, but
That's
some.
Right. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
We're back. It's the Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. John, we got to see some college football on Saturday. WKU played at Louisville, and we discussed this last week. We weren't sure if WKU could slow down Louisville's offense, and we weren't sure whether or not how Louisville's defense would look this year. We thought WKU's defense would be good, but we weren't sure about their offense. They've got another new quarterback this year. I thought, for the most part, Louisville's offense looked good. I thought, for the most part, WKU's defense didn't look bad. The big problem that they ended up having was they gave away too many opportunities to score themselves. I thought was really, in the end, the big difference in the game.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I thought overall Louisville dominated the game for the most part.
Yeah.
But Louisville's offensively they are a tremendous offensive football team.
Mm-hmm.
They were last year. Nobody stopped them.
Right.
Nobody stopped them. And defensive, from the WKU point of view side, if we want to spin it that way, they're not going to face a better team than Louisville. That's going to be the best team they're going to play all year.
Yeah.
And I thought that defensively, Western played not. They gave up too many splash plays, big plays.
Right.
But number 10, I've gone blank. The defensive end or the outside linebacker for number 10 for the Toppers.
Is that D'Angelo Malone?
Yes, he is a heck of a player.
Right.
And they were trying. It just looked like to me, scheme wise, they were doing everything they could to stop the run. And it just opened up the big play for Louisville. But Louisville's receivers and backs and their quarterback Cunningham, they are really, really good. I don't know. It's hard for me to judge the Toppers because I think Louisville's a top 20 team. I'll be honest with you. And the reason why I've got mixed feelings about Western is they had 2 touchdown drives of less than 5 yards.
Right.
Those are botched punts by Louisville. Just I don't know what the punter was doing, to be perfectly honest with you. And other than that, they had the one good drive. But I thought Western's quarterback struggled. Mm-hmm. And I think that Western's in a tricky situation with this quarterback. Now he's a transfer from Maryland, and it may just be, when he gets more in Conference USA that he'll fit better. But the scheme-wise is a totally different scheme than what Coach Helton ran last year, and I think what he was used to running when he was with Coach Brom as well. Mm-hmm. Because this quarterback, and I forgot his name.
Tyrone Pigram.
Yes, is much more of a scrambler, runner than a thrower. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be different. And I think the question is going to be is do you change your offense? And a lot of times you have to change your offense to fit your personnel. Mm-hmm. But are you going to change it to fit a one-year player?
Right.
And he is. He's a grad transfer. Mm-hmm. And because he wore down himself. Now it may be in the first game, but there was some open receivers. They just did not throw the ball very well at all. But I think Western will be okay. I think defensively they're going to be fine. I'm not sold right now offensively right now what I saw, but I do know Louisville is very good, and that's a tough opener for Western.
You mentioned the missed passes. I guess that's what I mean by the missed opportunities for WKU to score. I mean, it's not – you talk about their scheme. I think what happened was their scheme worked, but Pigram didn't necessarily work in all of the things they were trying to accomplish, and maybe that's something that improves. Number one against the competition, better. Number one against playing against Conference USA opponents, and we haven't really discussed this. I mean, the colleges haven't been under the same restrictions as say the high schools in terms of practice and that kind of thing. But it's an unnatural kind of practice environment. And we go back to kind of the same thing we were talking about in the previous segment. You look at Louisville, they're bringing back a number of their skill players. All they really need to do is just not degrade.
Well, and defensively they got to get better.
And they've got to get better.
And they did look to me better. Mm-hmm. They did not give up. I mean, Louisville last year gave up over 40 points like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
And they still won 9 games.
Right.
Because they could outscore you. And they I thought they were better for the most part on that. But we'll see. Louisville's rest of the year is, ACC.
Right.
Notre Dame and all those, Florida State, Miami, all those games. So, they'll be really, really tested. But, I've kind of a mixed feeling on the Toppers. I thought, it could have easily been 42-7.
Yeah.
But I thought Western competed really well on defense. They gave up too many big plays against just a tremendous offense. And they're not going to see an offense that explosive.
Well, and that's kind of the thing. I mean, it looks like Western is the Hilltoppers are playing under the philosophy that if they can shut down the run, they have a real good chance of winning a game. they are probably 90% accurate with that against anybody but Louisville.
Probably, yes, correct. I agree with that. And but the quarterback play has got to get better.
Yeah,
and he probably will. I mean, he had some success at Maryland, and the one thing I do trust Coach Helton.
Mm-hmm.
I thought our state last year had 3 of the best coaching jobs of all college football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The guy from Louisville, Satterfield, I take back everything I said when I wanted Brom.
I remember this discussion a couple of years ago.
It's because I wanted Brom more than anything else. But this guy is an incredible coach.
Yeah.
I thought Helton did a great job last year, and Stoops, he won 9-10 games without throwing a pass last year.
Right, with a wide receiver.
That's correct, at quarterback.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we go back a couple of years to just review. I'm with you. I thought Brom was going to get the Louisville job, and I really thought he was the right person for the job.
Well, he was offered the job.
Yeah. Now, when I saw that they hired Satterfield, I did have belief that if nothing else, Satterfield would be able to recruit better than a lot of people. And he might be able to recruit better than Jeff Brom. I don't know, but
he changed the culture.
Yeah,
with basically 2/3 of the team that he inherited that quit.
Right.
The year before.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so the talent was there. I mean, what had to happen is somebody had to unlock it and get it to be bought in, and Satterfield obviously was able to do that. But I say that because coming from App State, I mean, I thought he did a great job there. I mean,
he did.
He left a great program that's still doing well.
I agree. Another thing I will say, just from watching the game on TV, I thought Louisville handled it well in terms of, I think they allowed 14,000 people there, 15,000, and I thought it worked well. I mean, there were so many college games that were played in which nobody was there.
Right.
I mean, they didn't allow anybody at I think the Notre Dame. No, Notre Dame did have some people there. I'm sorry, but there were several games. The Wake Forest Clemson game, nobody there.
Yeah.
I think they had 100 people.
I think that was Miami UAB didn't have anybody there.
That's right. And for the life of me, And I'm kind of a moderate on all these issues, on all things. When you have a stadium of 50, 60,000, I think you could properly space 5,000 or 10,000 out.
I don't actually think it has anything to do with the spacing. I think it has to do with what we were talking about in the previous segment on all that has to go into just having fans at the game.
It is. It's a chore, but daggone, if we can do it, I'm sure they can do it.
Well, and they probably can.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and maybe they will after the first weekend. Maybe they'll review this.
It does make the atmosphere a tad bit better.
A little bit. Yeah. Somebody yelling, "You crazy ref!"
I was watching the Notre Dame Duke game Saturday, and I thought it was neat how they had the band in one giant section, and they were spaced every which way. Yeah. Had masks on, but they were going. They were fine. I thought it was pretty cool.
Maximum sound reflection in that setup.
They did.
Real quick, let's talk about the further results of Conference USA, because talking about what lies ahead for WKU. I mean, I know that we've not seen a whole lot of Conference USA yet, really.
Yeah.
But I mean, just WKU's not excellent performance against Louisville looks a lot better than some of their CUSA brethren so far. I mean, we had UAB and Miami. Miami beat them 31-14.
Not bad.
Well, it's not. The score's not bad, but UAB's offense was atrocious in that game.
Okay.
And then App State, we were just talking about, they smacked Charlotte 35-20. Is Appalachian State in the Sun Belt? Is that where they are at the moment? They have moved up to the FBS
Yeah, I don't
level.
know what conference they're in.
Yeah, and then UTSA, they won in double overtime against Texas State.
Okay.
All right. The final of that one was 51-48. UTEP got beat by Texas 50-3.
Okay.
And that was all of the Conference USA results.
Well, I mean, the Sun Belt was good.
That Sun Belt was good, wasn't it?
The Big 12 was horrible.
Yes, it was. Maybe they should have taken the season off.
Iowa State got beat.
Right.
I think Kansas ended up losing to Coastal Carolina, didn't they? They were down 28-3 at halftime.
Yeah, let's review that real quick.
So I know those two losses right there.
Louisiana Lafayette beat Iowa State.
That's correct.
The Ragin' Cajuns, I don't think, are normally known as being a football powerhouse.
They wore them out.
They did indeed. I mean, the final was 31-14, so it was the exact same score that UAB got beat by Miami. And Arkansas State beat Kansas State. Arkansas State's another
Sun Belt team.
Yeah, but not necessarily known for being a football powerhouse.
Nope. And Kansas loses to Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, look, Arkansas State opened the season with a loss to what was that? Austin Peay. That's who they lost to.
Did they lose to Austin? I thought they beat Austin.
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. They did beat them. I'm sorry. I got that backwards. Yeah. And look, early in that Duke-Notre Dame game, I actually thought Duke might figure out a way to win that game because Notre Dame did not look all that spectacular.
Not good early. Duke's well coached.
Yeah, that's right.
Very, very well coached.
So, I mean, those were some interesting ones. And then Georgia Tech beat Florida State. So, I mean, some interesting outcomes from Saturday in terms of those things. Austin Peay, they lost to Pittsburgh 55-0. So, yeah, that's right. They're 0-2. Oklahoma did look good against Missouri State.
Right.
And you mentioned the Clemson-Wake Forest game. Clemson won pretty handily.
Did you get the Kansas score?
Oh.
That's Les Miles.
Yes, 38-23. That was the final. Wait, Les Miles is at Coastal Carolina?
Kansas.
Oh, he's at Kansas. That's right.
Second year.
Yeah, Les Miles is one of those coaches that I forget that he exists sometimes because I was not really a fan of his when he was at LSU. So, yeah, I forgot he got a job at Kansas.
Not a good loss.
No. Hey, by the way, their offense probably actually looked better than it did when he was at LSU.
They were down 28-3 at half. Let me just remind you.
Yeah, so not actually.
No.
What do you kind of think about that? We were 2 weeks into the college football season. How do you think things are kind of looking? I mean, we really don't have a good view of it in a lot of ways because SEC's playing SEC only. The rest of the ACC,
and we hadn't seen them play yet.
Yeah, the rest of the ACC, they're not playing until September 26th or whatever.
Looks like the Big Ten's jumping back in.
Yeah, they're deciding they might be able to come back sometime in October.
I
now?
think so. Yeah. They sit around and watched everybody else and went, what are we doing?
Yeah, might as well play.
That's right. Might as well. That's right. It looks like they're going to vote supposedly today.
Yeah.
I mean, no, Sunday maybe. I don't know. They were supposed to vote. We haven't heard, but
right.
It looks like they're leaning toward playing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, why not? And as we've seen, we talked about this. The two options that it turns out you actually had was a Major League Baseball option, which was play the games, as many of them as you can.
Yep. Or
the NBA option, which was put everybody in a bubble, test everybody, and play season start to finish, playoffs and everything, finish out the season. And that's just not the NBA option, as we talked about. It's just not really feasible for a lot of colleges and high schools. So we've gone the route of let's see how many games we can play. And looking at it now, I'm guessing that was probably the smart move. I mean, we may not finish these seasons. I don't know. But playing some is better than playing none.
Yeah, I mean, and it's still week by week. And Virginia Tech has already pushed back, canceled their game, or moved it to a different time. Auburn has had to stop practice for a while, but they're going to resume.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's one of the game changers is going to be, and I think one of the reasons why the Big Ten is what they're considering is these 15-minute result tests.
The rapid test thing.
Yeah, that's a big change.
Yeah, which was just not on the table whenever they were making these decisions back in late July.
That's correct.
So, those things do change, and that is a positive. And we're going to talk about the other fall sports whenever we come back. This is Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we talked about football. It got started on Friday night, but on September 7th, last Monday, the other fall sports got to swing into action, and we got right out of the gates with some volleyball matches and got right out of the gates with a couple of soccer matches and just had a full week of fall sports. It was pretty awesome. I think I went to 2 volleyball matches, and then I went to a couple of soccer matches. On Saturday, I went over to the All-A soccer, and they played one game, and then they got flooded out, like literally flooded out. So they're going to redo that this coming Saturday again. But, how important do you think it is for the players? I mean, I know we've talked about the coaches and this kind of stuff, but I mean, how important do you think it is for the players to get this opportunity to play, whether they're a senior or not?
I think it's important. I mean, I do buy into the the belief that it's good for their mental health. I think it's good for a lot of things, whether it's teamwork, camaraderie, but mental health, just to be able to participate and do these things, because this is your only chance that you have. Your high school career will end your sports career for 99% of them.
Mm-hmm.
And those a lot of kids, not all of them, but there's a lot of kids that have put a lot of time into getting as good as they can at their craft, and it means a lot to them.
Right.
And I look at it from their perspective, and it's I don't look at it necessarily. Do I, as a fan, want to watch them? Yes, that's more selfish on my part.
Mm-hmm.
Do parents want their kids to play? Yes, because they often, they love their kid and they want to see their kid happy. I understand that, but I'm looking at it from the player's perspective.
Right.
And I do think it's not only good for their mental health, but I also think it teaches lessons. I think there are times it keeps people out of trouble. I'll just be honest with you, because it keeps them focused on a task, a healthy task, and so forth. And I'm like I said, I'm kind of a moderate on a lot of these COVID issues and so forth. But I do think the right thing to do was to give these kids a chance to play.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that was the right direction to go.
And I'm happy to see that we pulled it off for the first week. I don't think people understand, though, that this is not an easy thing to do, again, for the schools. It is a lot of it's not just a lot of work. I think people are not going to feel sorry for you for having to work at it, but there's a lot of stress and pressure, to be quite honest with you, that's been put on a lot of school officials to pull this off.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that people we talked about this last week. Just be kind, please, to the people at the gates. Be kind to the people who are working. A lot of things.
Try to wear a mask.
Try to wear a mask. Actually, you can't get in if you don't have a mask on. Try to keep it on once you're in.
That's right.
And I do think one thing that people might get tired of us saying this each week, probably, but I think it can't be said enough. Don't take out whatever frustrations you have from your day as you're trying to get into the game and they're asking you to fill out this form and take your temperature. Don't take it out on the people at the gate. They are there to facilitate so that we can have these sports played.
Right.
And it's not on them. They're just following the instructions they've been given.
And I think we've, this early in the season, I think some of our local teams and athletes have gotten off to a good start.
Right.
I know from the Barron boys have gotten off to a good soccer start. They're 2-0, and
yep.
They got another big performance from Aiden Niken in the first game when they got a win on the road at LaRue. I think 3-1. I think he had a couple goals, and then last Thursday night against Russell County, they won 7-1. And I think senior Seth Mitchell had a big game. I think he had four goals, I believe.
Yeah, and 2 assists.
2 assists. So they got off to a good start. The girls of Barron lost their first game, but they lost to Bowling Green, which is 7-1. That's a team that hadn't even been playing the last couple of years. That's one of the things that Coach Niken has done is up the schedule, which I think is a good move. So they've gotten off to a decent start. I think Glasgow girls opened with the win, I believe.
Yep.
And so did the boys lost to I think Bowling Greenwood,
yep.
and then got a win on Saturday, right?
Yeah, they lost to Greenwood 4-1 and beat Russellville 9-2 on Saturday.
That's right.
The Glasgow girls opened against Clinton County, not in their district anymore.
That's right.
Beat them 12-0. Then the next night on Tuesday, they beat Warren East 1-0.
That's a good win.
Their senior night.
That's right. And the volleyball, I know Barron's girls opened up with a win against Caverna, and they got a good district win against Monroe. That's not something they've done a lot in the last 10 years. Beat Monroe in volleyball, so that was good for them.
Beat them 2-1.
2-1. I think Glasgow has gotten off to a little bit of a slow start in volleyball. I think I'm right on that one. They lose their first 2, I believe. Yeah,
they lost to Metcalf and Russell County, and it's both games were very similar for Glasgow there. They struggled in the first set and then came back and played better in the second one. They're still I think maybe they had one of their players out for both of those games, one of their seniors, so they're trying to adjust to that.
And then, golf, Barron boys got a good win against Glasgow this week in a 9-hole match, and
Yep.
I think they split their series. They played both times, and Glasgow won the first one, and
They've won on each other's home courts.
That's correct. So a good win. I think Barron had several. I think they had 3 kids in the 30s, which is good.
Yeah.
And the Glasgow girls have continued their good play.
Yeah.
I mean, they're playing really well. I think the Barron girls have improved as well.
They have.
And their regional tournament will be here before you know it. A couple weeks, I believe.
Yeah, it's only a couple of weeks away. It might be on the September 26th and 27th. I don't remember which one's first, boys or girls.
That's right.
I think the girls play first at Frankfurt, at Franklin Country Club, and the boys will be at Crosswinds. Their regional will be at Crosswinds.
Yep.
Mentioning the Glasgow girls, they played in the All-State tournament this past Saturday. Managed to dodge the rain up there and play really well. They were runners-up, I believe, to Lexington Christian is who they were runners-up to, which is one of the better teams in the state. They shot, I believe, 306 as a team. Nina McMurtry had a great day. She shot 71 in that particular tournament. Abby Lee, I believe, shot 74. They overall, that was McMurtry's personal best. Then Bailey Birdsell also shot her personal best in that tournament, and Allie McCoy shot in the 70s as well. So
that's good.
They had an outstanding day. That despite it being the All-A, that particular golf tournament is usually pretty good because some of your smaller schools are some of your better golf programs in the state, as it turns out, on the girls' side.
Yeah, well, that's a good showing.
Yeah, and so they're rolling along. Like you mentioned, the Barron County girls, they've been improving. I think their last tournament they actually played in, they struggled a little bit in that tournament, but they've gotten some better rounds since then. And one thing that's coming up, and I believe Glasgow, real quick, they have the all-state points that they list that the Kentucky Golf Coaches Association keeps up with. Their system has been down the last couple of weeks, so I don't know what the scores are for that. They're supposed to be back up soon, but they use that for qualifying for the Coaches Association All-State Tournament, which I believe they started doing last year, the year before, and I believe it's the top 12 teams play in that, and it's might be actually more competitive than the actual state tournament because
sure it will be.
Yeah, because the state tournament you wind up with teams from all over the state in the 16 or 15 regions, whatever they have.
There may be the 3 of the top teams may be in one region.
Yeah, exactly.
And they all don't get to go to the state tournament.
That is correct. And so this all-state thing that they started doing a couple of years ago is a heck of a tournament. Now, Glasgow South Warren look like they are probably in, at least based on the last scores they posted. Barron is trying to get into it. I think they were a couple of, they may have been in a couple of slots out of getting in. So that's what they had picked up a tournament at Juniper Hill last weekend to play in to try to get some more points to see if they could get in there. So they're knocking on the door. If they get in, guaranteed it'll be one of them. It'll be the best tournament they've probably played in all year for Barron and for Glasgow and everyone else, as we just mentioned. Why? So I believe that's coming up in a week. I believe that's a week from coming up next week. I believe is when it is.
It'll be good preparation for the region.
Yes, it will. You play in that, and you see some of these teams. And also, I would imagine all the teams that wind up playing in that are aspirations to be in the state tournament itself.
Guarantee you.
Yeah, so those are some things to look forward to coming up. You know, it's kind of interesting because of the way we're talking about fall sports getting started for the team sports. Meanwhile, golf is getting close to the end of its season because it got to start on July 31st. So, I mean, going to be an interesting time.
Yeah, as certain as some fall sports are just starting their season, golf is nearing its end.
Yeah. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, a fascinating thing happened on Thursday night. I think it was the NFL season kicked off. It was the Chiefs and Texans. We talked about this last month. We were talking about we didn't think that was the best game to kick off the season just because the playoff matchup wasn't all that thrilling in a lot of ways. But anyway, I'm sure for Chiefs and Texans fans it was great. And then we also had, I believe, Serena Williams was playing on that evening in the tennis open, U.S. Open.
Lost,
that's right. We had the NBA playoffs, Game 7, was it? I believe we had on Thursday night. Was that Raptors and Celtics Game 7 on Thursday night? We had
Hockey
playoffs, Major League Baseball. We had the WNBA. We probably had, I don't know, some track meet somewhere that people were cared about. I mean, people were saying it was a historic Thursday night. It's the first time in history all the major sports you could think of were playing on the same day. Kind of wild.
Yeah, it was, and that's obviously it's COVID related, and I mean, this is normally the time of football just has its own space, except for baseball. But baseball is not in the is not in the playoffs quite yet in September. Baseball is normally ending the year. You also had the finals of the PGA playoffs.
Yeah,
that's our last. It's their their big playoff event or whatever. So yeah, I mean it's kind of hard to keep up with, to be honest with you. I think Kansas City, the football, won the ratings war.
Mm-hmm.
And I, to be honest with you, I'm watching more football. I'm having a hard time with basketball, just because it's just not that time of year. I mean, I watch maybe the last.
Got you
quarter.
out of rhythm.
It's out of rhythm. I'll occasionally watch a little bit of hockey, not a ton. Baseball, I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to be honest with you. So it's, but yeah, I mean, it's from a sports perspective, it's an incredible time of year. It's almost too much so to keep up with.
Well, and that's what, to me, to some degree, I mean, I had it marked on my calendar that the Chiefs and Texans were playing. I was interested in seeing Patrick Mahomes play. I was not all that interested in seeing the Texans, but then I didn't watch much of the game at all because one thing, I had somewhere to be to cover, a soccer match. That was one part of it.
Me too.
Yes, you did. And then, the other part was there was just so much going on that I can only hold so much within this cranium of mine, to be honest with you. So, I mean, that was part of the deal. But also, I guess it's a lack of the preseason. The NFL season didn't feel like it was actually starting.
I think the lesson learned is that the NFL is not going to do away with the preseason.
Yeah.
Now, it may not be 4 games. They could go down to 2, but I do think there is an importance to the build-up to the season.
Right.
I do think it adds something. Plus, you can evaluate some of your rookies and players.
Yes.
But I do think they're not going to just wipe away that.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned evaluate some of your rookies and players. I mean, as a fan, you can evaluate some of the people who got a lot of hype in college.
That's
and
correct.
You get to see them in preseason. It kind of gets you ginned up. I'm with you. I know the players would like to get rid of the preseason, but I think
The good players.
Yes, they sure would.
The established players.
Yes, and look, when you look at like a lot of times, let's say the NFL treated the preseason like the NBA treats the summer league. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where basically these older players aren't really working for a position because if you're paying them $35 million a year, they're probably going to start.
Yes.
There's no real threat to them losing their position without injury. So you're really just, why not take the opportunity to basically play those roster spots that you're going to be trimming down and giving these other guys a lot more time.
Should.
And I think that actually generated a little more interest in some ways.
I agree.
So, yeah, I can see them cutting back, but I didn't think about this. Like the preseason, I've never liked it. But I didn't think about the fact that it does kind of get you ginned up for the idea that the season's starting.
It does, and I do think it serves a purpose.
Yeah, it does. But meanwhile, we had a Game 7 in the NBA. That was a fantastic series, as it turned out, between the Celtics and the Raptors. Celtics ended up winning it, and
they actually outplayed them probably 80% of the whole series.
Yes, they sure did.
And they looked like they was going to put them away earlier, and Toronto hit the three-pointer with 0.5 seconds to go to kind of turn the series
game
back
3,
around.
yeah.
But, yeah, Boston finally put them away.
Right.
So it's Boston and Miami.
Uh-huh. And then we have the Clippers and the Lakers coming up. Well, probably. The Nuggets kept themselves alive. Anyway, but I'm happy. I'm actually happy to see this Heat Celtics series. I think it's going to be a good.
I do too. I like both teams.
Yep. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's in Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.